Hello, parents. Welcome to the Masterful Parenting Podcast. I'm Anne Alvares, parent coach, school counselor, and mother of two. Do you sometimes struggle with your parenting role? Do you notice that sometimes you're repeating patterns that you learned in your own childhood? Maybe you are carrying childhood pain that has not been healed, and you notice that it is showing up in your parenting with your own children. Perhaps you yell or get frustrated easily. Maybe you are directing them or telling them what to do all the time, and you notice that your actions are affecting your relationship with your children. Well, parents, I totally understand this. I came from childhood pain and I learned how to be a relational parent with my children. And I can teach this to you as well. This podcast is all about learning how to heal the childhood pain that we are carrying so that we can foster healthy relationships with our kids. Join us every week for a new show, and we will dive into the healing and the fostering of healthy relationships with our children. Hello, parents. Welcome to the Masterful Parenting Podcast and YouTube channel. I'm super excited. I have a special guest. Her name is Erica Hornthal. She is known as the therapist who moves you. She's a board certified dance movement therapist and licensed clinical professional counselor who helps people reconnect with their bodies to improve mental health and emotional well being. As the founder and CEO of Chicago Dance Therapy, she specializes in working with individuals who tend to overthink and underfeel, guiding them to use movement as a powerful tool for self expression, regulation, and healing. Erica is also the author of Body Aware and a sought after speaker who brings awareness to the vital connection between the body and mind, inspiring people to move differently in order to think and live differently. So excited. I know I'm going to learn something new today, Erica. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat and
Oh,
to provide some insight to you and your audience today.
oh, so great. Okay, so why is movement important in parenting?
Oh, that's such a good question. So, I think movement is important, period. But what we forget or conveniently forget is that most of our communication is in our movement, is in our nonverbal communication, right? That's like 85, sometimes even 90% of what we're saying. And yet, as parents, I feel like we really focus on the words. We'll even have those moments when our kids get to, not everybody, obviously, but for the most part, when our kids get to the point of their lives where they are able to verbalize, we will even force them to do so, right? Use your words. Tell me what you're thinking. How do you feel? So, movement is actually such an essential part of parenting because it gives us information about how our children feel.
Mm.
It allows us to observe, and it also allows us to intervene in the relationship so that we can create more dialogue and partnership.
Okay, okay, that sounds really intriguing to me. So how do we use movement to support the ever-changing world that comes with parenting? Like maybe you could give some examples of when you've used movement in your own parenting or how you help your clients
Mhm.
to use movement in their parenting.
Yeah, I think first of all, we have to sit with our own definition of movement. For so many of us, movement coincides with exercise. So if that is your definition of movement and you're thinking, well, how am I going to bring exercise to my parent-child relationship, right? Like, how is exercise going to help me as a parent? Maybe when I exercise, I boost endorphins, I feel better, I'm happier, I'll be happier for my child. But I mean, that only lasts for so long, right? So I think we have to redefine movement, what it means, what it looks like to you. And for me, movement is everything. It's the way I posture, it's the eye roll, it's how I'm holding tension in my body, it's how I'm breathing or the lack thereof. It's the face, right? Everybody knows like the face that mom makes or the face that dad makes when you know to stop doing whatever you're doing and to pay attention, right? For better
Mhm.
or worse, not really here to comment on that, but just like noticing these small shifts, I call them micro movements, even. That's actually the key, right? So for parents or my clients who are parents, the first thing I'll often do is, notice those areas of tension, right? Usually it's, oh my God, I can't believe what happened yesterday, or oh my God, my child is having a really difficult time. I will ask parents, what are you doing in those moments? What does
Mhm.
your body look like in those movements? If you could revisit that, think back to that struggle yesterday, what did your posture look like? Can you emulate that today? Right? And just tell me, how are you moving? What is happening in your body? Well, I'm rigid, I'm stiff, my shoulders are really tight. The vein is popping out of my head. I feel like I'm all in my head right now. I don't know what's going on in my body or below my shoulders. I'm not really aware. And that gives us information as to where we need to start. For a lot of parents, it's actually anchoring, feeling our feet, giving ourselves awareness of our lower body that allows us to move a little bit more, allows us to breathe more fully, which allows us to regulate, get some perspective, maybe even calm down for a moment so that we respond, we don't react. And that's a challenge when our children are dysregulated and we're dysregulated. We're just always
Mhm.
coming from a moment or a place of reactivity instead of responsivity, right? Or being
Right.
responsible. So, very different forms of movement than we might be thinking, but it really starts with like, what is happening? What are you noticing? And can we make small shifts that allow us to actually be present, right? Not
Yes.
just calm down, but be be the parent in the room so I can actually notice what's happening with my child and get some distance. I can offer them some distance, right? And then we can also evaluate safety, right? Am I safe in this moment? Is my child safe in this moment? These are all really important questions. Then we can start the, kind of avenue of co-regulation, empathy, maybe problem solving if that's what it requires in the moment.
Right. Yes. Okay. I love that. I know I use that a lot when I'm working with teenagers who have anxiety. I
Uh-huh.
often ask them, what's happening in your body? Like, like what are the signs that you're getting anxious? And a lot of times they can tell me, they can be like, my heart's beating really fast, or I'm getting sweaty, or I freeze, like I can't move, things like that. And so like that's such an important thing to like our body signals to us what's happening with us, right? So paying attention to what's happening in our body is going to give us an indication of what's happening for us, like how we're feeling about things, right?
Yeah, I mean, the first step is the body. Movement actually precedes thought, which then creates more movement and the cycle continues. So, again, if our definition of movement is always intervention, we are missing that, you know, that precursor to
Yeah.
thought,
Yeah.
and when I say movement, I'm even meaning sensation, right? Input.
Right.
So it could be something I see, even for a fleeting moment, but I receive it in my eyes, right? My brain, my body. We don't even realize that that was the precursor to whatever thought I'm having. With all the scrolling we're doing and social media, uh, consumption. We're seeing so much, but then later
Yes.
on, we're angry, right? We're frustrated,
Yeah.
we're upset. We lash out at our kids or say something to our spouse that we didn't mean to. When
Yes.
we've missed all the steps. We don't even realize that it might have actually been something I saw as I was scrolling that created this response that then led to this thought that led to this reaction and this behavior.
Mhm.
So it is really important to, as quickly as we can, get an idea of like what's happening right now. What am I feeling? What's happening below the neck? How is my body moving right now? Because that's always an opportunity to change the way we think. If we
Mm,
can't always go back and can't go back and change the things that have happened. But the minute we notice and we're more aware, we can change our body, we can move differently, changes the way we're thinking, and then we can also repair at any moment, of like, wow, I realized that what I just said maybe didn't feel helpful. Or, you know what? I really jumped to conclusions. Tell me more about your day. You know, Tell me your
mm,
side. How did you feel? What's going on with you? Uh, it's hard. It's really hard because parenting others, right? Just parenting in general is inevitably going to bring up and trigger things that happened for us in childhood.
yes.
I can count on, I mean, I don't think there's ever been a time where I've stepped into one of my children's school and not been triggered by my own school experiences, and so it took a while. I'd have these feelings and reactions. I'd get home. I would, talk to my spouse about it. And over time, I was just like, okay, I don't want to feel this way anymore. Right. So
Mhm.
what's going on? And then step by step, right? It would get to the point where I was already in the school or in a meeting or something. And I'm like, okay, just notice what's happening in your body. Okay. My shoulders are really tight. I'm going to try to relax them a little bit. Not breathing very well. I'm going to take a few deep breaths. Eventually, it got to the point where I'm being proactive and I'm doing something at home before the meeting, doing something in the car before I entered the school, and not involving my kids in it at all because it was actually something I was bringing into it. I needed to take responsibility for how I was showing up.
Wow. I think wow, that's so powerful. I find that so powerful because like we get those moments, those memories, those triggers, right?
Yeah.
But we don't know what to do with them. But if we're noticing and we're paying attention to what's happening with our body and then doing something different or relaxing the shoulders, like you said, then you can approach it differently, right? Then you're not so triggered anymore when you go into the school, right?
Yeah. I mean, our thoughts are wired. And so, as much as we want to think differently, we have our mantras or our affirmations. What really solidifies the new neural pathway is moving differently, right? So if every time I go in, I'm thinking something differently or I'm trying to say something to myself, it will get through. It's not for nothing, but we either want to match it with a, a movement, a new movement, a different way of moving, or if the words aren't really helping, just start in the movement to begin with, embody something differently, and it will have a huge impact. So movement, to go back to your original question, is not only about the relationship to our kids, but it's the relationship to ourselves. So
Yes.
when we have a better relationship with ourselves, we can have a better relationship with the people around us. And that mind body connection is like one of our first relationships, right? And the
Yes.
way our mind treats our body actually mirrors the way our bodies were treated by our caregivers, right? How we
Yes.
were spoken to is how we will continue to speak to ourselves. And
Yes.
so oftentimes we're not kindest to our bodies, right? Our mind is placing all this judgment on how we look, what we should eat, how we should feel, what kind of parent I am, who's better than me, who's got it all figured out, who doesn't. We just constantly berate ourselves for not having the manual that tells us what to do at every given moment.
Right.
It's not a healthy relationship to have when we're just doing the best that we can. So the
Exactly.
more we can work on that mind body connection, the healthier all of our relationships will be.
Wow, I love that. I love that so much. Um, so the communication part, how do you use your body, your movement to support communication with your family?
Well, a lot of it is in my own personal life, a lot of it is is simply using it to regulate myself in those moments. So I'm and I get overwhelmed like the best of them. And so it's not even getting to the point where it's like I never get overwhelmed anymore, right? It's going to happen. A healthy nervous system has these flows, these highs, these lows, right? Everything in between. So part of it is managing my own feelings, right? And then the other part of for me using movement is to help my kids manage their own feelings and emotions. And I guess a third even would be modeling that for them, so depending on how old your children are, they don't have that language. I mean, they're born with the ability to regulate their body. What happens is a lot of us as parents, we kind of override that, right? One of the examples I use is like a simple shh, right? Shh, 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 shh.
Yes.
We do that with our babies, right? Our infants. And I think oftentimes it gets translated to like, like, be quiet. But
Yes.
originally the shh was to emulate the sound of blood flowing in utero, right? All the sounds of like digestion and fluids floating, right? While we're just kind of floating around, we hear this constant shh.
Yeah.
So just that sound alone is supposed to be very nurturing. However, for us as adults, we start to get into the like, shh, just be quiet, be quiet. And
Mhm.
it isn't as helpful as it could be, right?
No.
So for me to manage the discomfort that's coming up, however I need that to be, right? If it's my anxiety, my overwhelm, if I can address that so that I can take my infant and I can provide that calming shh, 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 right? I can pat, I can tap, I can feed them. They're not absorbing my tension because then
Yes.
it's just this vicious cycle, right? They'll start to cry even more so. I'll start to cry. We'll cry together. And
Yeah.
it just feels so messy, right?
Yes.
Emotions are healthy. When they get out of control, they just feel really, really overwhelming. And I know I can speak as a mom, like we tend to berate ourselves, right? Why can't I do it?
Yes.
What's wrong with me? I'm not fit for this, and we
Yes.
just, hormones, surging doesn't help. So
And when our
again,
kids are
it's,
emotional, we blame ourselves.
we can, yeah,
Yeah, a
yeah.
lot of
I
times
mean,
we think badly about ourselves if our kids are not
well,
regulating.
because often it's a reflection of our parenting, right? It's a
Yes.
reflection of us. If I have we'll say, bad, I'm using quotes here, bad kid, then it's a reflection of my bad parenting, or worse, I'm a bad person, right?
Yes.
Versus my child isn't bad, they're having a hard time, right? This may
Yes.
be an unacceptable behavior, but we can address what's underlying it, right? We're not blaming ourselves so much as trying to support what we need in the moment, as well as, making sure that our children are safe and understand the expectations, right? Uh,
Yes.
it's challenging. It's like we're not meant to control anybody else's emotions. We can barely really control ours, right? We just have to learn to kind of flow with the energy that is emotion. So
Yes.
instead of when we're really anxious and ramped up, just trying to calm down, we actually have to meet that intensity, right?
Right.
Nurture and soothe ourselves like we would our kids. Things like swaying, rocking, patting, tapping, obviously
Yes.
breathing, but certain types of rhythms in breathing can be really helpful. Stomping, right? Kicking, uh, don't kick people, but there's a reason our kids do it. We
Yes.
need to do them as well. We need to find healthy outlets for our anger, our frustration, our joy, our sadness, everything.
Yes. Yes, for sure. I love that. Okay, so Erica, what would you say to parents like what are your top tips in using movement to help yourself so you can parent better? What would you say?
I think it's really important that you carve out time to be with yourself and your feelings or emotions. And I know that's really difficult because, especially depending on how old your children are, I think we roll our eyes at that, right? Because we're like, okay, yeah, I'll get alone time. But really we do need it. And
Yeah.
you are getting some of it at some point, right? Even if it is while you are brushing your teeth before you go to bed. You know, maybe it is in bed with the lights off. Uh, Maybe it's while you're preparing breakfast or making that bottle. Um, we can't wait for the moments we want to be alone to do these things. We have to really look at the opportunities where we already have the, so to speak, alone time. Even if that means our child's in the other room,
Mhm.
or eating just a few feet away from me. If you have space, right, where you have agency over your own body, that is an opportunity to check in with how you're doing, how you're feeling physically, not even emotionally in terms of like, I feel sad, I'm overwhelmed. We don't have to identify the feeling verbally or thoughtfully. We actually just want to identify it in the body. Something like a body scan, so in those moments, do a little head, shoulders, knees, and toes. That's good for parents, right? We know head, shoulders, knees, and toes because we're teaching it to our kids. So
Yes.
use that as an opportunity to check in with your own body, head to shoulders, everything between my neck, right? My
Yes.
face, aspects of my head, down through my torso. How well is that part of my body moving? Is it in pain? All the way down to our feet. And I would also say, like, utilize those moments when you are trying to soothe your child to soothe yourself, right? What are the
Mm.
rhythms and patterns that help you feel soothed? So, a really easy thing to try, even in this moment, is I invite people to put a hand over their chest. You can
Okay.
either pat your chest or you can rub your chest.
Mhm.
And to just quickly identify which one feels more nourishing for you. Some people could kind of go either way, but for the most part, everybody has one that they prefer over the other. I personally always appreciate a rub.
Do I
So,
like the rubbing?
yeah, I like the rubbing. And
I already
oftentimes that
feel better.
mirrors, yeah, oftentimes that mirrors what we received as kids, right?
Yeah.
So I imagine that when I was an infant, I really wasn't patted as much as I was rubbed,
Yeah.
and that's super soothing to me. So you can emulate that anywhere, right? You can keep some lotion in your purse, pocket, car, squeeze them into your hands, and just apply a little bit of like a massage, right? You can do it to your arms. Give yourself a gentle squeeze, and then just gently rubbing our arms up and down. If you're at a meeting or you're on a Zoom call and you're like, oh, it's going to be too much, put your hands on your thighs, right? Nobody can see what I'm doing right now. And I'm just gently applying a little bit of pressure and circling around my thighs and my knees. So allow yourself to be soothed, even if it is by you, because it will help. It will provide a little bit of release. Hopefully, until you have an opportunity for someone to either step in for you or for you to get that rest that you need to go to sleep, whatever that is. We have to start addressing our own nervous systems because inevitably we will co regulate with our children and they will pick up on that.
Yes. Yes. And also we're modeling to our kids too, right? When we're using these, when we're being aware of our bodies, then we can teach that to our kids. Like, what's happening with your body right now? What do you feel? How, what sensation are you feeling?
Yeah.
So they can
One
be
of the
more
best,
body aware.
yes. One of the best examples, or maybe not best, one of my favorite examples actually that I put into Body Aware was my daughter was 4, I believe, 3 or 4. And I just remember her turning to me and she was like, Mommy, my tummy hurts. And tummy stuff is like, I run for the hills. Because
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh my God, I'm gonna have a mess to clean up. She's gonna get sick. I'm gonna get sick. Like this is the dialogue that is playing in my head, right? And I paused myself. This wasn't the first time she had said that, but I paused myself in that moment and I was like, whoa, this is your stuff, not hers, right? I want to be very careful with my words because whatever I say next is going to create an association for her and her tummy, right? Oh my God, my tummy hurts. The world is ending, right?
Yes.
I didn't want my story to be hers. So I took a breath and I remember like planting my feet and I paused and I asked her, what do you think your tummy is trying to tell you?
Mm.
Do you know what your tummy is trying to tell you? Does it have something to say? And I thought, well, let's see what she knows. I know she's only 4, but kids are intuitive, and
Yes, they are.
if it hurts because she's sick, she'll probably have an idea. If it hurts for some other reason, she could say, oh, I just, walked into the door. The doorknob hit me in the tummy. Oh, okay, so it's a pain. Oh, because you just got hurt. Got it. So she paused for a moment and she said, it hurts because it's hungry. And I said, oh, okay. And I started thinking, well, hunger is way different than sickness. I could
Yes.
have just freaked out. I could have just freaked out over nothing, right?
Yes.
So, and I'm still a little agitated because that's just who I am and my response to this cue. But I helped her get a snack. She ate. She rested for a little bit. And I said, how does your tummy feel now? And she's like, much better. It's full.
Wow.
Mommy crisis
Yeah.
averted, right? So does it
Yeah.
always happen that way? No, because there will inevitably be that time where it's like, Mommy, my tummy hurts, and then they do get sick, right? Or they are sick.
Yes.
But you know
Yes.
what? That did happen, and I was okay. Because like
Yeah.
I had been there enough for myself and been like, you know what? Regardless of what happens, we're okay. We're gonna get through this. I have my body, I have my anchor. Like and we can be partners in that way with our kids. It's not that I know any more about their body than they do. Sometimes they know a lot more. I've
True.
learned so much from my kids because they're talking from their body as opposed to all these years of silencing their body, talking from their mind. So
Yeah.
I try to create that empowerment of like you know what you need. If you don't know, come to me. But I think you know a lot more about what you need because you know your body. It's a young body, but you still know what your body needs. So we can empower our kids to make those decisions too alongside us. And then
Yes.
if they're struggling, if they need help or they're really unsure, we can help create an environment of stability, right? And
Mhm.
security and feeling like, okay, we can do this together.
Yes. Ah, such a great example. Thank you. Okay, Erica, before we go, can you please share with parents where they can connect with you and get your book and find you?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. So, I will say that even though I love talking about these topics or this topic, and also because I am a parent myself, don't be alarmed if when you see me on social media, my focus is not entirely on parenting. I promise you that everything I talk about translates to parenting
Yeah.
100%.
Yes. Okay.
But so that being said, you can find me on Instagram at the therapist who moves you and my website, which is ericahornthal.com. And there are links to my resources, in terms of books, wherever you feel comfortable purchasing your books, you can find Body Aware. I have a movement therapy deck. And then I just released a journal called Body Talk, which is a daily practice of getting back in touch with our bodies and getting some freedom from our thoughts.
Wow, I love it. I love it. I already feel better with that rubbing.
Good. Yeah, keep
I'm gonna
doing
do that
that.
more often.
What's
Good.
funny is like people will see you do that, and the thought is like, "Are you okay? Do you have
Yeah.
heartburn?"
Yeah.
Because we're as we get older, it's like we're all about intervention, not the prevention, right? So imagine if we were just kind of all walking around, just like, yeah, nurturing ourselves, right? Versus like waiting until it gets to the point where we're like, oh, you
Exactly.
know?
Until we're in pain.
Right, we'd ask different
Exactly.
questions, but
Yeah.
it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. We go with the pain model until we know better, right? We learn from it.
Exactly.
So
Well, thank you so much, Erica, for sharing your wisdom about body and body movement. And it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you.
yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to come on and sharing some thoughts with your audience. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you, parents, for joining today. I hope you got a lot of value from the show, and we will see you next time. Take care, everyone. Thank you, parents, for joining the show today. If this show blessed you, changed you, or helped you in any way, I would appreciate a Google review or a review on my podcast. And I would love you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. masterful parenting so we can get the word out to more parents about relational parenting. Thank you so much, parents, and we will see you next time. Take
Audio
care,
Jungle.
everybody.